I want to take a different approach because we all enjoyed the couple of presentations before in this morning. And I have actually have two big questions in my mind, and I would like to share some of my thoughts. The first question is, we usually elect the logo, you know, the one, we have a lot of misperceptions, but, you know, on these U.S.-China relations. We see each other as both beauty and beast, right? And for example, when the Americans talk about China, the huge market, you know, whatever, the Chinese culture, Chinese food, you know, not that bad. And also when the when Chinese see the United States, we used to call it Meidi, a beautiful imperialist empire. You know, we have a lot of contradictory images, imagined communities, and a lot of misperceptions. So the first big question is, how do we define the current relationship? And the second question in my mind is, what are the most important issues we have to deal with? We have to solve. We have to be considered. So so let me begin with the first question on this current relationship. A lot of people use some of these positive concepts. For example, the G2, only China and the United States have a great future, you know, for the world. And the Chinese Dai Bingguo state councilor used the word C2, you know, and that means more cooperation, more coordination between our two countries. Some other people use more positive terms like synchronized swim, you know, it's so beautiful. You raise your arm, I raise my arm, we have a, you know, simultaneous movement. Olympic game, hope everybody follow the rules. But however, there are some negative terms or neutral terms. For example, David Lampton used the term same bed, different dream. We share a lot of interest, but we do have a lot of conflicts, right? And some other people use the fight of the century, the inevitable conflict between our two countries. So what I see is, I think we need to work out ways to turn these dark clouds into rainbows, you know, in the future. So that's the first question. What I see the relationship, I will define the current relationship in 4 dimensions. First dimension, as Clayton already mentioned, what I call very broad contact, right? We do have over 400,000 students studying in the States. We do have a people-to-people contact, exchange programs going on, cultural exchange, economic ties, you know, a lot of these kind of things, very broad contact. Second dimension, what I call is substantial cooperation, right? In terms of economic cooperations, the bilateral trade volume last year is probably over 500 billion US dollars. And also last year, I know it's 4.75 million people visit each other, you know. And also with the two countries signed the big agreements on the climate change. So this means we do have a substantial cooperation. The third dimension, to put it simply, we call it a very competition, right? Competition, diplomatic competition. Both countries work very hard on South China Sea area, you know, trying to win the heart and mind of the Asian people, Asian countries. The United States have a lot of allies in the world, over 70, you know, partner countries. China, who are the best friends of China? Pakistan, Vietnam, not necessarily, right? So So we have a diplomatic competition, we have an economic competition. Huawei, for example, have you mentioned opening up of over 400 jobs in the state. And Huawei is actually doing very well in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa. So a lot of Chinese people begin to use Huawei instead of using iPhone. So this is a substantial economic competition, right? And military competition, asymmetric warfare, at least in those what we call the first island chains, second island chain within that area. So the last dimension, what I see is what I call the limited confrontation. Limited confrontation expresses itself in the Chinese conflict with Japan on Sankaku Diaoyu Island, on North Korea. You know, the United States blamed China. So why haven't you worked so hard? You know, why China, you know, cannot make North Korea to give up its nuclear plan? This kind of things. We have conflicts on Taiwan because the United States continue to sell arms to Taiwan, you know, and DPP come back to power. So I think mainland China is waiting for the last opportunity, October 10th on this year, you know, because the Taiwan or KMT will celebrate the national holiday, October 10th. We hope that China can come back to 92 consensus. Otherwise, you will see maybe there's a Cold War between the two sides or across the strait will break out. For example, I heard a lot of, I serve as a consultant to the Taiwan Affairs Office. I heard a lot of people saying that we should end the diplomatic truce because currently there are about 22 countries, small countries have still maintain diplomatic relations with Taiwan. So China can launch two waves of diplomatic attack. The first wave, you know, get rid of 7 or 8 countries, and you know, a second wave, you know, get off another 7 or 8. So that leave Taiwan maybe 5 to 8 countries who have diplomatic ties. So that will make Taiwan very awful, be more isolated in the international affairs. So, but I think China, the mainland Chinese government is very hesitated and still waiting. But I don't have any hope on that. I'm kind of a negative. So this is the first question, that define the relationship. I define the relationship in 4 major dimensions. Secondly, so the second question I said, what are the most important issues we have to deal with? I would like to put forward 4 or 5 major issues. The first issue, we need to be more confident. We need to have long-term vision on this relationship. You heard a lot of complaints, you know, Chinese military people would like to set up a right line to the United States. You know, aircraft carrier cannot get into the Yellow Sea. You know, you cannot sell more arms to Taiwan. You heard all these complaints. And also you heard complaints in the United States, right? People are so pessimistic on the Xi Jinping, the government is becoming more aggressive, more conservative, China passed NGO law, whatever. So, but at this moment, I think we need to be confident. We need to think about how the former leader deal with relationship. For example, when Deng Xiaoping decided to establish diplomatic relationship with the United States in 1978, and people questioned him, asked him, why you want to build up relationship with this imperialist state, capitalist state? Deng Xiaoping said, those who follow the United States are getting prosperous, getting rich. So getting rich is glorious. So over the last 30 or 40 years, you see the result. of the economic reform, right? So on December 15th, China and the United States made a joint announcement to build up these diplomatic ties. And 3 days later, the third plenary session of the 11th Party's Congress convened. So the domestic reform policy and opening up policy intertwined in 1979-78. So that means this having good relationship with the United States is a part of the Chinese grand strategy for the national development. So that is why after '89, the Tiananmen movement, Deng Xiaoping also said the United States-China relationship must be fixed. So this is the new ideas, new long-term vision. And Xi Jinping also put forward the concept of new major power relationship. But why he, later on, the Chinese political advisors gave him another concept, one belt, one road. Why you need to move out, move to work on the Central Asia, some other, trying to strengthen the relationship with Russia, why China did that strategic move. The logic is, after 2010, when Hillary Clinton was a Secretary of State, the United States made an announcement. We will go back to Asia, rebalancing strategy in Asia. So China says, oh, you come to this table. I don't have a direct confrontation with you. I'll go around. So that is the logic behind the one belt, one road. In addition to this, trying to control the sea lanes. I don't think China have that kind of grand strategy on consider the sea lane, these other things. But I think the philosophy there works. The second and the biggest issue we have to consider is global context, and third, mentioned a lot on that, peacekeeping activities, a third country element in U.S.-China relations, North Korea, for example. I think China have two bottom line. The number one is China is now ready to give up this traditional relationship, friendship. Anyway, in early 50s, China fought it in North Korea. Even China set up a good relationship with South Korea in 1992. So China hasn't finished its process in normalized relationship with North Korea. A second bottom line, I think is whatever China does on North Korea, China doesn't want to be seen as a collective effort, working with the United States, putting collective pressure on North Korea. China would rather go through the UN resolution, we work with United Nations. So that's something I think with a lot of American complaints, but if you go work through the UN Security Council, I think more effective. The third element, I know I have 1 minute. The third element is domestic politics, right? Why I think the American people complain about Chinese political system. Chinese people also see the United States over the last 20 years in different, they have a different attitude, different sentiments, right? And in 1989, when students demonstrated in Tiananmen Square, they put up a Statue of Liberty. The United States at least serve as a role model for China for economic development. But after 2003, I think to a lot of Chinese, the United States, after Iraq War, the United States was becoming a country everyone loves to hate, too imperialist, trying to export democracy by force. So that is something Chinese people don't understand. I think sometimes when you think you almost get to a stage, maybe Donald Trump still have a great chance to become next president. So the American model of democracy lost its institutional attractiveness to a lot of Chinese. So that is something I think the domestic politics, especially issues on human rights and democracy, is very important, right? There's a lot of misperception there. The last issue I would consider is the crisis management on South China Sea, on some other splashing issues. Don't have time, but I think this is a critical moment. Govern ourselves better is more important. So when two countries are focusing more on their domestic politics, that actually can bring a strategic opportunity for this bilateral relationship. So my last word is something like let's begin work on this relationship, trying to, as I said, there's a beauty in the beast part of this in this relationship. To get rid of the beast. The longest journey is a journey inward. So I hope I can have more discussion with you later on. Thank you very much.